Ask everyone. Men reveal the words from a woman that hit them harder than they admitted. Story 1, You Deserve More Than Me. I remember sitting across from her at a cafe that had become our unofficial meeting place. The same chipped mugs. The same faded napkin holder. That day, the air felt different. Heavier. She stirred her coffee with robotic precision and refused to meet my eyes. When she finally spoke, it came like a whisper. You deserve more than me. At first, I laughed. Thought she was joking. But her face stayed still, like a painting frozen mid-heartbreak. Those words didn't come with an outburst or a cry, they came with calmness. Like she had rehearsed them until they sounded like closure. I wanted to protest, to ask her if she had forgotten the way we built everything together from the ground up. From ramen dinners to dreaming about beach houses we couldn't afford. I thought I knew her voice in every mood. But that version of her, the detached, settled one, was someone new. The rest of our talk was a blur. I barely processed what she said. I only remember repeating, I love you, and her smile that didn't reach her eyes. I didn't understand it then, but now I realize she believed she was freeing me. That her brokenness was a burden she didn't want me to carry anymore. She handed me freedom like a gift I didn't ask for. After she left, I replayed it for months. You deserve more than me echoed in every silent room. I kept wondering if love meant sacrifice, if she loved me enough to give me up. And whether that meant I'd never see her version of more again. Reflection, sometimes, the deepest pain hides behind the kindest words. Freedom isn't always what heals us, it can be what wounds us most. Story 2, I Feel Safe With You. She had this way of walking into a room like she owned her silence. Never loud, never the center, but impossible to ignore. We weren't together long, but every moment with her felt like time borrowed from a better version of myself. One night, after watching raindrops race down a foggy window, she leaned against me and said, I feel safe with you. It was quiet. So soft I almost missed it. But my heart didn't. Those words changed everything. Not because she meant I was good at protecting her physically, but because she trusted me emotionally. She'd grown up around chaos, had people betray her trust more times than she cared to count. And yet, with me, she felt grounded. I was her calm in the storm, and that responsibility felt heavier than love itself. I asked her later what she meant, and she said she didn't have to pretend around me. That she didn't feel judged for her bad days or weird jokes. She told me I was the first man who didn't try to fix her when she cried. Just held her. That hit me harder than any romantic gesture. It meant I had given her something she didn't know how to ask for, peace. Even after she drifted out of my life, I carry that sentence with me like a badge. I feel safe with you. It wasn't a confession, it was a declaration. The kind that makes you believe you were doing something right, even when everything else felt wrong. Reflection, safety isn't just emotional, it's spiritual. When someone chooses to breathe easier around you, you've earned more than love. You've earned trust. Story 3, I wish you loved me like you love your dreams. We were sitting on the hardwood floor of my studio apartment, the smell of acrylic and coffee battling for dominance in the air. I was halfway through explaining my idea for a citywide mural exhibit when she interrupted me with a whisper that felt like a gut punch, I wish you loved me like you love your dreams. I froze. My sketches blurred in front of me as the gravity of her words pulled every ounce of certainty out of my lungs. I was always the visionary. The late-night planner. The one who believed ambition solved everything. She was my balance, gentle, real, a reminder to slow down. But in chasing my career, I stopped chasing her. Our dinners became rushed takeout. Our conversations turned into one-sided updates about my latest concept. She smiled through it, but her heart had started packing bags I never saw. Her words weren't cruel, they were tired. Tired of being second to every project. Of watching me love something that couldn't love her back. She didn't want me to stop dreaming. She wanted to be part of the dream. But I kept placing her on hold, promising that once I made it, we'd find time. Love isn't a future plan, it's a present priority. And I failed to give her that. After she left, I looked at my dreams differently. Not as achievements, but as responsibilities. Was I chasing them to fulfill myself, or avoid something deeper? Her one sentence held a mirror to my soul. I wish you loved me like you love your dreams. I still hear it. Every time I finish a piece and look around a quiet room. Reflection: ambition can blind us to love standing quietly in the corner. If your dreams don't have space for someone's heart, they may not be dreams worth chasing. Story 4, You're My Home. She was a traveler in every sense: airports, backpacks, stories she collected like souvenirs. Her phone had more boarding passes than photos of us. But one night, as we ate noodles on my chipped balcony under a sky too cloudy for stars, she looked at me and said, "You're my home." I dropped my chopsticks. She laughed nervously, as if afraid she had said too much. Those 3 words landed like a meteor. Me. The man who never knew what to do with permanence. She saw me as her anchor, not her detour. It shifted something inside me. I had always considered myself temporary. Fleeting. Replaceable. But suddenly, I mattered. I was a destination, not a layover. I started thinking about what home meant for her. She never stayed anywhere long enough to unpack fully. But with me, she lingered. She danced barefoot in my kitchen. She left post-it notes with jokes in my books. She cried openly. Being her home wasn't about being perfect, it was about being safe, being accepted, being enough. Even after she moved on to new cities and people, I held on to those words. Not because I wanted her back, but because I finally understood that real connection isn't about location. It's about resonance. Reflection: we don't always know when we've become someone's compass. Home isn't bricks and mortar, it's heart and presence. Story 5, You Don't Have to Fix Everything. It had been one of those weeks: job chaos, family pressure, and a car that coughed its last breath during rush hour. I was standing on the side of the road in the rain, cursing the sky and myself when she showed up, umbrella tilted, hands full of snacks. Without drama, without lecture, she just looked at me and said, "You don't have to fix everything." I stared at her like she had just spoken a foreign language. My whole life I'd been taught that love means being useful, being strong. I thought showing up meant doing more. She saw the exhaustion in my eyes and didn't ask for solutions. She just sat with me and let the silence carry what words couldn't. Those 6 words cracked something open. I realized how much of my identity was built on repair. How I feared being seen as weak. She didn't love me for my strength, she loved me for my honesty. My vulnerability. That moment shifted our dynamic completely. I stopped hiding my stress. I stopped pretending I was fine. Her sentence, "You don't have to fix everything," was more than a reminder. It was permission. To be messy. To be real. To be held instead of holding. Reflection: being strong isn't about doing it all. Sometimes, real strength is in letting yourself be cared for without guilt. Story 6, Take Care of Yourself. For once. She stood at the doorway like it was a metaphor. 1 foot inside the life we built, 1 foot ready to step out into something new. There was no dramatic fight, no storm of words, just the quiet tension of a goodbye that had been coming. She looked at me, eyes dry but tired, and said, "Take care of yourself, for once." Those last 2 words hit harder than the rest. For once. It wasn't just a goodbye, it was a critique wrapped in concern. She had watched me neglect my own well-being for years. Overworked, underslept, running on caffeine and ambition, I became the kind of man who believed rest was weakness. And she tried. She made me breakfast when I skipped meals. She booked therapy sessions I never attended. She stayed up on nights I refused to talk, hoping I'd open up. I didn't. Her parting words weren't angry. They were weary. She wasn't leaving because she didn't love me, she was leaving because I didn't love myself. I had worn down every bit of care she offered, and in the end, she realized I couldn't accept it. Her final act of love was a plea for me to treat myself the way she had tried to. After she left, I sat with those words like they were a haunting. I started noticing the cracks, dark circles, aching back, silence when there should have been laughter. And one morning, I made breakfast. Just for me. I walked without headphones, let myself rest without guilt. It wasn't easy, but it felt like honoring her, even in her absence. Reflection: sometimes goodbye isn't rejection, it's a last reminder to love yourself before someone else burns out trying to do it for you. Story 7, you make the silence feel full. Silence had always been my enemy. Growing up, silence meant something was wrong. Arguments brewing, feelings unspoken, tension thickening the air. I became a talker, someone who filled every gap with noise, jokes, opinions. But then I met her. She didn't fear silence. She danced in it. One afternoon, while we were sitting side by side watching sunlight creep across the rug, she leaned in and whispered, "You make the silence feel full." I didn't understand at first. I thought she was being poetic. But then it hit me, she meant our quiet wasn't empty. It was rich. Whole. I didn't have to entertain her. I didn't have to explain or narrate. She felt close to me even when words weren't exchanged. That changed how I saw myself. For once, I wasn't the guy who had to prove his value by performing. I could just be. We'd spend hours together saying nothing, folding laundry, sipping tea, staring out windows. And those moments became the ones I missed most when she was gone. Because with her, silence meant comfort, not awkwardness. She taught me that intimacy isn't loud. It's presence. It's knowing someone so well that even your quiet feels like a conversation. I used to think love had to be expressed constantly. But she showed me that sometimes, love is felt in the spaces between the words. Reflection: true connection isn't measured by how much you say, but by how peaceful you feel when you say nothing at all. Story 8, I trust you with my story. She wasn't one to open up easily. Life had taught her that vulnerability came with risk. Betrayal had sharpened her boundaries. When we started seeing each other, I noticed how carefully she chose her words, each one placed like a brick in the wall she built around her heart. One evening, while sitting on my couch with mismatched socks and lukewarm tea, she said, "I trust you with my story." I stopped breathing for a second. That sentence carried more weight than "I love you." Her story wasn't polished, it was jagged, unfinished, aching in places I couldn't see. She began sharing pieces of it, fragments of nights spent in fear, moments when she thought love would never feel safe. I didn't interrupt. I didn't try to fix anything. I just listened. It was like watching someone hand over a fragile object without packaging. She didn't warn me, she just believed I'd handle it with care. Her trust made me feel more human than any compliment ever had. I realized that love isn't just about chemistry or shared playlists, it's about being given access to someone's inner world and not abusing that privilege. We didn't last forever. Life pulled us in separate directions. But I never told her story to anyone. I protected it the way she asked me to, with silence, with honor. Her trust taught me how sacred vulnerability is, and how rare it is to be chosen for that role. Reflection: being trusted with someone's pain is one of love's greatest responsibilities. Handle it gently, some hearts come with cracks that never fully heal. Story 9, you showed me what love isn't. We were 3 years deep into a relationship that looked fine on paper. No screaming matches. No cheating scandals. Just a slow erosion of connection. One evening, as I microwaved leftovers and she scrolled aimlessly on her phone, she looked up and said, "You showed me what love isn't." That sentence dropped like a stone in my chest. I hadn't expected it, not from her. I thought I was doing everything right. I worked hard. I was loyal. I didn't flirt or lie. But her words made me realize that love isn't just about not doing harm, it's about actively doing good. I was emotionally absent. Always halfway elsewhere. She'd spend days waiting for me to show real interest, and I was always too tired or too focused on work to see what she needed. Her sentence wasn't bitter, it was illuminating. It forced me to examine what kind of partner I'd become. Had I ever asked her what made her feel seen? Had I made her laugh recently? Had I even looked at her with fresh eyes and not just familiarity? She left shortly after that conversation. No drama. Just clarity. I started journaling that night, asking myself if I'd ever truly understood what intimacy meant. Her words weren't an insult. They were feedback. And I carry them with me, not to dwell in guilt, but to ensure I never give anyone half-hearted love again. Reflection: love isn't measured by what you avoid, it's measured by how intentionally you show up. Don't be someone's quiet disappointment. Story 10, I don't want to be strong today. She was always strong. The kind of woman who held everyone else up even when her own knees were shaking. But one evening, after a long call from her mom and a string of hard days, she curled up beside me and whispered, I don't want to be strong today. I didn't know what to say. She wasn't asking me to solve anything. She just needed space to unravel without judgment. We sat there, no solutions, no pep talks. Just warmth. She cried. Not the loud kind. The kind where tears fall silently and the heart breaks inward. Her sentence stuck with me because it was so honest. So raw. People expect strength from women like her. They forget that resilience isn't infinite. That even warriors need rest. She didn't need advice, she needed softness. So I gave her that. I held her. I made tea. I reminded her that it's okay to fall apart in someone else's arms. That night made me redefine love. It's not just about chemistry or laughter. It's about being a safe place when someone finally lets go of the weight they've been carrying alone. She taught me that letting someone be vulnerable is the kindest thing we can offer. Reflection: even the strongest hearts need softness. If someone chooses you to fall apart with, honor that trust with tenderness. Story 11, she said, I didn't know love could be quiet. She wasn't used to silence meaning peace. Every relationship before me was noisy, fights, accusations, dramatic gestures. So when she leaned over one lazy Sunday morning, pancakes on the stove and jazz humming softly in the background, she said, I didn't know love could be quiet, it stopped me cold. She had her head on my shoulder, hands relaxed, and eyes looking at a future that didn't require chaos. I didn't realize how much noise lived inside her memory until she described how calm scared her at first. She told me she thought love had to be explosive. That stillness meant boredom. But in our quiet, she found safety, a rhythm of care without shouting. She began to understand that love didn't need volume to have impact. It needed trust. She said it felt strange not to argue every week. That her body was waiting for the fight that never came. I listened and realized that healing isn't just about removing pain, it's about learning how to live when pain isn't calling the shots anymore. I never tried to fix her. Just gave her space to unlearn what harm disguised as affection had taught her. We built something soft. Intentional. Steady. And when she finally smiled without flinching, I knew I'd done something right. Her voice, that day, was the quietest I'd ever heard, and the strongest. Reflection: real love doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it's the silence between two people that speaks loudest. Story 12, she said, I never wanted you to save me, just stay. She came to me broken but not helpless. She never asked for rescue, just presence. One night, after a long conversation about her past, her job, her tiredness with the world, she leaned forward and whispered, "I never wanted you to save me, just stay." It shook me. I thought showing love meant solving every problem. I wanted to fix her mood, give advice, find solutions. But all she ever wanted was someone who wouldn't leave when things got hard. She told me she'd learned to expect abandonment whenever she cried. That vulnerability usually drove people away. With me, she asked for constancy. Not perfection. Not heroism. Just someone who wouldn't flinch when her truths spilled out. I realized love isn't about being a knight, it's about being a witness. She wanted her story to be heard, not rewritten. She didn't want to be healed, she wanted company during healing. The day she said that, I let go of needing to do things. I just existed beside her. Cooked dinner. Sat in silence. Made room for her shadows. I became her quiet support, and that meant more than any romantic gesture ever could. Reflection: sometimes the kindest thing you can do is not run. Love doesn't always fix, it simply remains. Story 13, she said, "I thought you'd fight for me." She sat across from me at a restaurant where the mood didn't match the conversation. Candles flickering, low music, and a breakup brewing. After a long pause, she said, "I thought you'd fight for me." Those words weren't angry. They were hurt. She wasn't begging, I had already begun drifting. What she meant was simple: when things started crumbling, I didn't show up. I was present, but passive. She told me she felt like she was the only one trying to patch the cracks while I stood by watching the wall collapse. I didn't have an answer. In some twisted logic, I thought walking away would be kinder than forcing it. But I didn't realize that people don't want surrender, they want effort. She was trying to signal for help, and I confused it with complaints. Her sentence haunted me for months. "I thought you'd fight for me" became a call I never answered. I replayed moments I missed, phone calls I ignored, conversations I brushed off, signs I didn't catch. She didn't ask me to fix her. Just to care loudly. I was quiet. Too quiet. Reflection: indifference can feel crueler than hate. If you love someone, don't let silence be your response when their heart reaches out. Story 14, she said, "Being around you feels like breathing." I used to think love had to be intense, passion, sparks, grand gestures. But one day, while folding laundry side by side, she smiled and said, "Being around you feels like breathing." No fanfare. Just truth. It was the most honest compliment I'd ever received. She didn't say I was exciting. She said I was essential. That being with me didn't drain her, it soothed her. I never tried to impress her, just lived honestly. And that simplicity made her feel safe. She explained later that most people felt like storms, unpredictable, exhausting. With me, life felt navigable. I was her rest, not her adrenaline. I started realizing love shouldn't feel like running uphill, it should feel like resting in the shade. We didn't talk about future plans or deep philosophies, we just coexisted. And it was beautiful. That moment reshaped how I approached love. Instead of being the firework, I became the steady flame. And it was enough. Reflection: if someone says you're their breath, it means you've become their peace. Never underestimate the power of calm love. Story 15, she said, "You're the first person I've ever cried in front of." She was strong. Not the loud kind. The kind that endured quietly. But one evening, while telling me about her father's absence, tears slipped out. She froze. Then whispered, "You're the first person I've ever cried in front of." It felt like sacred ground. I didn't say anything, just held her hand. She kept talking, voice trembling, recounting all the ways she learned to swallow pain. She told me crying used to feel unsafe. That vulnerability made her feel exposed and weak. But in that moment, she chose me to see her crack. And I knew it was the highest compliment she'd ever paid me. Crying isn't about sadness, it's about safety. She trusted me enough to unravel. I didn't realize how much that meant until weeks later, when she thanked me for not flinching. I didn't fix her tears. I didn't offer clichés. I just let her be human. Reflection: tears aren't weakness, they're trust. If someone chooses to cry with you, treasure it like a gift. Story 16, she said, I didn't know I could be loved gently. She had this armor around her: sarcasm, independence, emotional distance. But once, while brushing her hair after a long day, I said nothing. Just moved slowly, letting silence speak. And softly, she said, I didn't know I could be loved gently. That shook me. She wasn't used to patience. She told me love had always been transactional, compliments with conditions, attention laced with control. She had learned to keep score, to anticipate withdrawal. But I didn't play by those rules. I just stayed. No expectations. No angles. I gave hugs without needing one back. I showed up consistently, not grandly, just reliably. And over time, her armor softened. She stopped waiting for the slap after the sweetness. She started believing love could be kind. Her sentence was both heartbreaking and healing. It made me realize how rare softness is. And how much people need it, especially those who've never felt safe. Reflection: kindness shouldn't be rare in love. Gentle love heals wounds harsh love never acknowledged. Story 17, she said, I want to be weak with you. We were talking late into the night, wine nearly empty, candles melting low. She looked me in the eyes and said, I want to be weak with you. It wasn't a confession, it was a request. She'd spent her life being strong for others. But she wanted to fall apart in a place that wouldn't judge her. Her voice cracked as she explained how exhausting strength had become. I told her she didn't need to prove anything with me. From that moment on, we created space for emotional honesty. She cried. Ranted. Questioned everything. And I didn't flinch. I supported, listened, existed. Her request for weakness became a blueprint for intimacy. I realized love isn't just about sharing strength, it's about sharing struggle. She taught me that allowing someone to collapse safely is the ultimate trust. Reflection: strength is admirable, but vulnerability builds connection. If someone chooses to break with you, you've earned their deepest truth. Story 18, she said, you made me believe I was worth loving. We were sitting on the porch, just watching the rain fall in quiet streaks down the railing. She had this distant look in her eyes, half reflective, half cautious. Then, out of nowhere, she looked right at me and said, you made me believe I was worth loving. I didn't speak right away. Her voice was steady, but I could tell those words had taken effort. There was history stitched into that sentence, some of it painful, some of it healing. She came into my life guarded, like someone always expecting a trap beneath kindness. Compliments made her suspicious. Generosity made her flinch. She told me early on that she didn't expect to be a priority in anyone's life. She was used to being the backup plan, the late reply, the forgotten detail. And it wasn't because she lacked anything. She had strength, warmth, intelligence. But experiences had chipped away at her belief that she deserved love freely given. So I didn't approach her with fireworks. I approached her with consistency. I replied when she texted. I noticed small things, how she liked her tea, how she closed her eyes during certain songs. I didn't make grand gestures, but I never made her doubt she mattered. Slowly, she began to trust that I wasn't just being nice. That I wasn't waiting for her to change or improve. That her flaws didn't scare me off, and her scars weren't a burden. She started opening up in layers, like someone discovering sunlight after years in shadow. She told me about exes who loved her loudly at first and quietly disappeared. About a childhood full of promises that were never kept. About how she built walls, not out of pride but out of exhaustion. And then she said it, one evening, beneath soft light and steady rain, you made me believe I was worth loving. Those words floored me. I hadn't realized I was doing anything special. But that was the beauty of it. She didn't need miracles, she needed someone to stay. To show up without asking her to earn affection. I felt honored to be that person, even briefly, even imperfectly. We're not together anymore. Life pulled us in different directions. But that moment sticks with me like a song I hum without thinking. Because I wasn't her savior. I was her reminder. That love doesn't have prerequisites. That being worthy isn't something you earn, it's something you remember. Reflection: sometimes love isn't about saying, I love you. It's about proving that someone never had to beg for it in the first place. Story 19, she said, you're the first person who listens without fixing. She was smart, driven, always holding everything together. One evening, she came to my apartment, dropped her bag on the floor, and just sighed. I asked her how her day had been, and she sat silently for a while. Then she said, you're the first person who listens without fixing. That sentence told me everything I needed to know about how love had treated her before. She explained that in past relationships, the moment she opened up, people rushed to diagnose her emotions like a problem needing immediate action. But I didn't offer advice. I didn't interrupt her pain with solutions. I just sat there, letting her talk, cry, pause. And in doing that, I learned something huge: people aren't always asking for help. Sometimes, they just want company inside their storm. She shared stories she had buried for years. Moments when she felt overlooked. Experiences of grief that she had laughed off in public but mourned in silence. As she spoke, I saw the weight that she'd been carrying. Some of it was so old it had fused into her identity. All I did was create space. I didn't try to pull it from her. I let her decide what to share, how much, and when. Later that night, she told me she felt like she'd finally been heard. Really heard. Not analyzed. Not interrupted. Just witnessed. That made me realize how rare it is to offer silence as love. To show empathy without control. She didn't want a rescuer. She wanted recognition. Reflection: listening is more than hearing, it's honoring someone's truth without rewriting it. Presence is the most healing language. Story 20, she said, you see me even when I'm hiding. She was good at disappearing in plain sight. The kind of woman who smiled for photos but carried a tiredness behind her eyes. We were lying on a blanket in a park, watching clouds drift across an early spring sky, when she turned to me and said, you see me even when I'm hiding. I asked her what she meant. She explained how most people only see the version she performs, the happy, capable, always okay version. But with me, she felt transparent. Not exposed in a painful way, but known in a gentle way. She said I picked up on her silences, her pauses mid-conversation, her unread messages that weren't just procrastination but emotional overwhelm. It struck me how deeply she needed invisibility to feel safe, yet how much she appreciated being gently pulled back into presence. She said that with me, she didn't feel judged for not being cheerful. That I noticed her slipping without demanding she snap out of it. She felt watched over, not watched. Those words stuck. You see me even when I'm hiding. I realized that what she called hiding was actually her survival instinct. And being the one person she didn't need to pretend for felt like an honor I didn't earn but had to protect. Even now, I find myself paying closer attention to silence, not as emptiness, but as messages waiting to be read. She showed me that visibility, when done with compassion, can feel like love. Reflection: to truly love someone is to notice them when they fade. Real seeing happens when you look between the lines. Story 21, she said, you made me feel like I was enough without earning it. She didn't say it during a candlelit dinner or anniversary celebration. She said it while we were walking back from the grocery store, plastic bags swinging between us, sky turning orange with sunset. You made me feel like I was enough without earning it. I stopped walking. She explained that most of her relationships felt like a performance, being good, beautiful, productive, funny. But with me, she never felt like she had to be anything extra. I loved her just as she was, on her worst hair days, in the middle of insecure spirals, during moments when she doubted her value. She said I never made her feel like love had a checklist. No boxes to tick. No tests to pass. Her vulnerability cracked me open. I hadn't done anything grand. I just never asked her to pretend. I let her exist and loved her for it. And in return, she bloomed. Became softer. Less guarded. More real. She shared thoughts she'd hidden for years, not seeking praise, just wanting to be known. It reminded me how often people are taught that love is conditional. She was taught to chase approval. I broke that pattern, not by being extraordinary, but by being steady. Showing up consistently. Never loving her more on successful days or less on difficult ones. I just stayed. Reflection: unconditional love isn't loud, it's the quiet way you say, "You're enough," even when someone can't believe it themselves. Story 22, she said, I didn't know I could laugh like this again. She had been through heartbreak that left her brittle. A divorce, a betrayal, and a loneliness that echoed. When we started spending time together, she was cautious, tiptoeing into laughter as if afraid it might shatter. One night, after a movie and a series of ridiculous jokes, she burst out laughing until she cried. Through breathless giggles, she said, I didn't know I could laugh like this again. It was such a simple sentence, but it felt profound. Laughter isn't just joy, it's permission to feel alive. She had lived years in survival mode, where happiness felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. That evening, she realized she hadn't lost her sense of humor, she'd lost spaces where it felt safe. Her laughter opened floodgates. She told me about all the ways she learned to stay serious, composed, guarded. How she feared laughter made her look naive. But in my company, she found ease. Lightness. A reminder that joy could be intimate, not performative. That it could come from inside, not just surface situations. Seeing her laugh freely reminded me of the resilience hidden inside pain. That we don't need to fix people completely, we just need to remind them joy still lives within them. Reflection: healing doesn't always start with tears, sometimes, it starts with the freedom to laugh again without fear. Story 23, she said, you give me peace without silence. She was always surrounded by noise, TVs, playlists, group chats, podcasts. She told me silence made her anxious, that it reminded her of loneliness. One evening, while lying in bed, phones off, just breathing in rhythm, she said, you give me peace without silence. I asked her what she meant. She said being with me felt peaceful even when we were talking. That my energy was calming, not draining. She explained that most people overwhelmed her with their stories, volume, demands. But with me, even conversation felt like rest. My presence didn't require performance, so her words came out smoother, less edited. It made me think about emotional volume, how some people make even simple exchanges feel loud. I had never aimed to be calming, but she said I was her quiet place without needing actual quiet. Her nervous system stopped bracing when I entered a room. That stunned me. She taught me that peace isn't just about silence, it's about feeling safe inside a connection. The way she phrased it, peace without silence, felt like poetry. She found serenity not because I said little, but because I made her feel heard. Reflection: peace isn't always absence, it's presence that asks nothing. Real calm lives in voices that soothe, not silence alone. Story 24, she said, you're my calm place. She walked into my apartment without saying a word, dropped her keys, and collapsed onto the couch. I knew the look in her eyes well, a mix of exhaustion, tension, and that unmistakable edge that told me she was running on fumes again. For the past few months, she had been buried in work, obligations, deadlines she didn't choose. She handled everything like a soldier marching through chaos, but at some point, everyone needs refuge. That night, I simply sat beside her, no questions asked. After several minutes of quiet, she turned her head, looked straight at me, and whispered, "You're my calm place." I didn't respond immediately. Her words felt like honey poured slowly over a wound. I knew she was a high-functioning hurricane in public, always efficient, always smiling, always performing. But here, in this silent apartment filled with mismatched furniture and the scent of chamomile tea, she allowed herself to fall apart. Not dramatically, just enough to finally breathe again. She told me that she never believed people could be calm. She believed calm was a place, a spa, a vacation spot, not a person. She said I had redefined that for her. That I was the only person in her life who didn't expect her to do anything, no entertaining, no explaining, no protecting her image. I was just there. Like quiet, warm air. She said with me, the silence didn't scream. It soothed. We didn't need loud love. We didn't need declarations. We just sat in the silence together, and that night, I realized that being someone's peace is far more powerful than being their passion. Reflection: love isn't always about fixing someone, sometimes it's just the act of making them feel safe enough to stop pretending. Story 25, she said, "No one ever waited for me before." She was chronically 10 minutes late, not because she didn't care, but because life had always overwhelmed her in small, relentless ways. One day, after an especially chaotic work shift, she expected me to be gone. We were supposed to meet at her favorite cafe. She arrived 25 minutes behind schedule, breathless and flustered. But I was there, reading a book, sipping her favorite chai latte I'd ordered in advance. She froze when she saw me, walked over slowly, and then said, almost inaudibly, "No one ever waited for me before." Her eyes weren't full of tears, but something heavier, disbelief and gratitude tangled together. She told me later that growing up, people didn't wait. Friends left early. Her parents were too busy. Exes didn't tolerate delays. She learned that being late meant being left. That her time was never worth someone else's patience. I never saw her lateness as disrespectful. I saw it as a symptom of the life she was trying to hold together. She was rushing between being a provider, an achiever, a caretaker, and sometimes, she couldn't beat the clock. So I waited. Without protest. Without frustration. She said my presence that day gave her a sense of worth that no compliment ever had. Waiting is a form of love. It says, I value you even when you're not perfect. And she had never felt that before. We started meeting more often after that, and every time, she arrived a little more relaxed, a little more sure that I would be there. Reflection: patience is a quiet way to say, you matter. Being there, even when they expect you not to be, is a kind of healing. Story 26, she said, I didn't think anyone could handle me. She was intense from day one. Her laughter was bold, her anger was swift, her dreams filled entire notebooks. She had opinions and passion and never apologized for either. That's what drew me to her. She was unapologetically alive. But the world doesn't always embrace intensity with grace. One evening, after she ranted about a boss who disrespected her, she paused, looked at me nervously, and said, I didn't think anyone could handle me. I saw the vulnerability behind her fire. She wasn't testing me, she was bracing herself for rejection. She told me stories of exes who told her to calm down, to stop being so much. Friends who distanced themselves when she got too passionate. Family who labeled her as dramatic. She had spent years learning to shrink herself so others wouldn't leave. But I never wanted her to shrink. I wanted all of her, the joy, the frustration, the messy middle. I never once thought she was too much. She was real. Raw. Unedited. And in a world obsessed with comfort zones, she expanded mine in the best way. She started trusting me more after that conversation. She laughed louder. Cried openly. Said things without filtering. And that was the point. People don't need to be handled, they need to be accepted. She taught me that loving someone fiercely means honoring what others tried to mute. Reflection: if you think someone's too much, maybe you're giving them too little. Love should make people feel safe to be their whole self. Story 27, she said, you never made me apologize for my anxiety. Her anxiety wasn't quiet, it lived in tapping fingers, pacing footsteps, midnight calls just to hear silence on the other end. She warned me about it early on, said she didn't expect anyone to stick around. Most people didn't. She said past partners grew tired of her spirals, got impatient, or made her feel broken. But after one particularly rough day where she couldn't leave the house, I stayed. No advice. No pressure. Just presence. That evening, she looked at me and whispered, you never made me apologize for my anxiety. That moment cut through me. Not because I did something heroic, but because she was so used to needing permission to simply feel. She explained how she'd spent years masking panic attacks, minimizing her emotions to keep people from leaving. But I had never asked her to hide. I simply let her be. We created rituals. Breathing exercises. Walks at her pace. Sometimes we sat in silence with her hand shaking in mine, and that was enough. She told me that not having to say, sorry, every time she wasn't okay gave her a kind of freedom she'd never known. Her trust deepened. Her anxiety didn't vanish, but her shame did. And that changed everything. Reflection: you don't have to fix someone to love them right. Sometimes, just staying through the storm is the miracle they needed. Story 28, she said, you make me want to stay. She had always been a runner, not in shoes or trails, but in spirit. Relationships, jobs, homes. She never unpacked boxes fully. Never trusted routes. I knew that about her from the start. So I never pushed. Never asked her to promise forever. I just showed up. One night, after dinner and dancing barefoot in the kitchen, she sat beside me, quiet. Then she said it, almost like a question. You make me want to stay. Her voice trembled, like she couldn't believe what she was admitting. She told me she'd always left before people could see her fall apart. That leaving was safer than rejection. But with me, staying felt less like confinement and more like sanctuary. I didn't demand her whole heart, I just kept holding space for it, day by day. And it slowly arrived. She began planting things. Left books on my shelves. Stopped checking the exit signs in conversations. She laughed more, cried openly, stopped packing emotional bags every time things got quiet. And staying, something she used to fear, became her choice. Reflection: some hearts aren't afraid of love, they're afraid love won't last. Choose people who don't make you plan your escape. Story 29, she said, you love me even when I can't love myself. It was a Tuesday. She hadn't showered. She hadn't eaten. Her texts were short, her eyes downcast. I asked her what was going on, and she shook her head. I just don't like myself today, she said. Then, a few hours later, tucked into a blanket she hadn't moved from, she looked at me and said, you love me even when I can't love myself. She didn't say it like praise, she said it like a quiet discovery. She had grown used to conditional affection, the kind that disappeared when her smile did. But I never asked her to perform. I loved her messy hair, her hollow days, her sarcasm and sadness and stillness. She later told me that my love made her feel safe enough to stop faking joy. That she didn't need to put on makeup for my approval. That I reminded her she was still someone to be cherished, even when her own mirror told her otherwise. I didn't fix her self-esteem. I simply showed her that her worth wasn't negotiable, not to me. Reflection: unconditional love says, I see you whole, even when you only see your cracks. That's where healing starts. Story 30, she said, you remember the details. We were just walking through a bookstore when I pointed out a novel she had once said she hated. She stopped. Turned to me. "You remember the details," she said, like it was something rare. And maybe it was. She explained that people always remembered the big stuff, birthdays, anniversaries, achievements, but forgot her nuances. Her favorite color in October. The song she skips halfway through because it reminds her of a funeral. The way she bites her lip when she's about to lie. I remembered it all. She said that kind of attention made her feel real. Not background noise. Not filler between moments. Real. She began telling me things just because she knew they wouldn't disappear in my memory. Her stories became more personal, her laughter more honest. She didn't have to repeat herself, because someone was actually listening. And when she felt forgotten by the world, she could count on me to recall what mattered. The little things. Her things. Reflection: love isn't just about showing up, it's about noticing. Remembering someone's edges proves you care for the whole. Story 31, she said, "You were my quiet rescue." She was drowning, but silently. No chaos. Just heavy eyes and